The latest U.S. intel says that Russian forces, about half of them, have moved from staging to combat formation. How close do you think are we to an actual Russian attack?
So I think it could happen tonight or in the coming days. And what we're seeing, especially the last couple of days, is, as you mentioned, the last week or two, units have moved from the large assembly areas, about 100, 150 kilometers from the border, to staging points about 10 to 15 or 20 kilometers from the border. And so they're moving to smaller formations, the battalion units. They're in kind of tactical formations. We're seeing equipment moving with troops, with equipment on top of the vehicles. Essentially, it looks as though they have just about every piece in place on the military side in place. And now over the weekend, there are a variety of events that provide a pretext for Russian escalation. So I think really it could happen at any moment at this point.
Any moment. Okay, let's take a step back, if we could, Rob, and talk about intent, or rather intentions. I mean, a lot of the thinking is that we're going to get Russian tanks rolling in. They're going to seize territory and hold it. You don't agree?
So it's possible. And it's really, one thing to emphasize that what Russia's doing right now is unprecedented. The military buildup is unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this in 30 years in a lot of different respects. A lot of Russian behavior has changed. And if we compare to what previous times Russia's used military force in 2014 or 2008, what Russia's doing right now departs from that pattern. And so the problem for analysts is looking at this and trying to say, okay, how much the previous times Russia's used military force inform what they're going to do next? I think it probably informs us somewhat, but other people think that Russia might go beyond just using coercive amount of force and actually try to occupy it. I think the real concern is that it appears Russia's political goals are very ambitious, and that means some way to try to change Ukraine's political orientation, possibly regime change along those lines, and that means a lot of military force have to be used. And the concern is, as a last resort, if Russia does other kind of more limited operations and use of military force, it doesn't achieve its goals, then occupying parts of the country might be a last resort it resorts to. And I think that's more likely now than ever at any point in the last 7-8 years.
Okay, last resort if diplomacy fails. How much of how small is that window for diplomacy right now? Or do you think, and honestly the answer, I guess, is nobody really knows what's going on in Vladimir Putin's head there. Do you think that he's already made the decision that the costs of doing nothing outweigh the costs of actually doing something, including a military incursion?
I do think that. And I think, when this buildup began, probably the decision was probably made in October or even maybe farther back into August. It was a crash course. They developed this new reservist program, first announced in August, never been announced before. It was very clear it was rushed through. And so when you look back, I think that President Putin probably accepted that, depending how events went, if he didn't get what he wanted, military force would be a last resort, and probably accepted that would need to be used. And if he backed down now, I think the problem is you only see more you only see President Zelensky become more emboldened. I think the lesson NATO would draw is that arms export to Ukraine was a key decisive step, and that more deterrence efforts would be necessary. And I don't think those are any kind of lessons that Russia wants NATO or Ukraine to draw from this. And so that's why I think that the cost of inaction from Russia's perspective are probably greater than the cost of escalating right now.